Welcome to the Selling from the Heart podcast on the Salescast Network. You've joined a global movement of sales professionals who are dedicated to being authentic and building trust. We call it Selling from the Heart. Together, we are on a mission to bring sincerity and substance to the sales profession we all love. Get ready to be inspired and equipped as we join our hosts, Larry Levine and Darrell Amy.
Hi, this is Larry Levine, and I'm absolutely blown away by your support for selling in a post-trust world. I'm thrilled to share some amazing news. Top Sales Magazine has named it the #1 sales book for 2024. This book was written to help sales professionals just like you build trust, create authentic relationships, and deliver meaningful value in a world that desperately needs it. Your support, enthusiasm, and belief in this message have made this recognition possible. Thank you. If you haven't grabbed your copy yet, it's not too late. Pick it up at your favorite retailer, and here's the best part. When you visit sellinginaposttrustworld.com, after your purchase, you can still claim an exclusive free bonus I prepared just for you. Let's continue the journey together to bring trust and authenticity back to sales. Thank you for being part of this incredible community. Let's keep building trust together.
Welcome back to the Selling from the Heart podcast. Your co-host, Darrell Amy, here today with Larry Levine. What's going on, Larry?
Hey, we got all kinds of things going on. Great seeing you. Great start to the new year. We're in for a treat. Let me tell you, we're in for a treat today, Darrell.
We are about to take the Selling from the Heart podcast to new heights. Michelle Curran is in the house. We're going to have an amazing conversation with her today. And I'm so excited about the Selling from the Heart community. All of what we see in the community as we interact is people who are passionate about what they do. And it leads to a type of drive and motivation that is just truly inspiring. And so we love hearing from you. If you're out in the Selling from the Heart podcast and you're new to the show, Larry and I would love to connect with you and connect you with other folks who are on this journey together. And I love the heart and passion of sales professionals and leaders in the Selling from the Heart community.
Yeah, and speaking of leaders, heart, and passion, I just got to give a special shout out to a guy named Paul Verzal. And if there's anyone who wears his heart on his sleeve, who waves the flag around Selling from the Heart, it's Paul. Paul, I know you listen. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Hear, hear. Well, today we are honored to welcome Michelle Curran, call sign MACE, a combat veteran and groundbreaking former F-16 fighter pilot who has served over 13 years in the United States Air Force. As the lead solo pilot for the elite Air Force Thunderbirds from 2019 to 2021, Michelle made history as the second woman ever to hold this prestigious position, captivating audiences worldwide with her precision and skill in aerial maneuvers. With over 1,500 flight hours, including 163 combat hours in Afghanistan, Michelle's remarkable career is a testament to her exceptional grit, determination, and teamwork. And now, as the founder of Upside Down Dreams, she translates her exhilarating experiences into actionable insights, helping people overcome self-doubt, tackle challenges, and pursue their dreams with vigor. Michelle, welcome to the Selling from the Heart studios. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. I am excited to be here.
Same here. I'm excited to have you.
This will be good. We've been working on this.
We've been working on it. We have been.
Well, our friends are absolutely going to love this conversation. As we get started, Michelle, you know the question every guest on the Selling from the Heart podcast answers, and that is, what does it mean to you, Michelle, to sell from the heart?
Yeah. So having my whole career until just the last few years be in the military and on active duty, I had a lot of misconceptions about sales, right? Like when someone says a salesperson, I think of a used car lot, like not now, but at that time. Since then, though, getting into speaking and writing, I've had to sell myself. And I've also spoken to a lot of sales audiences. And what I've really realized is that is a complete stereotypical misportrayal. A lot like people think that fighter pilots are arrogant, like they see Top Gun and they think that's what we're all like. That's like the used car salesman version of salespeople, right? Because I think what people are striving for and what makes them really good at what they do is when they believe in what they're saying, right? It's that authenticity where your values, your beliefs, your passions align with your actions and the words that you say. And people are pretty quick to pick up on when there's a disconnect there. And it also just feels icky and kind of exhausting, I think, for you when you're almost like playing a role and it's something that you don't truly believe in versus when you get to speak authentically, you can build that trust, that passion comes across to the person you're talking to, and they're just so much more compelled to listen to your story, to hear you out, to not just cut you off and hang up on you, or to, move on to the next thing because you're connecting with them at a human level. So I think that's what it really means to me.
You know what I like about what you said, and I can't scientifically prove this, Michelle, but it's just kind of my take on things, is we all have a sixth sense, and it sniffs out inauthenticity. It sniffs out BS. And people can tell when you really have their best interests at heart. They can just tell by your tonality. And if you're looking at them, how you're leaning in and your eye movements and things like this, but they can sure smell BS really, really quick.
Yeah. So it's probably not going to work. You're not going to sell as much.
No.
But it also is, I don't think it's a sustainable thing for the person doing the selling either. I feel like it's a great way to burn yourself out and just get that kind of stuck, icky feeling where you're like, not passionate about what I'm doing. I show up and I do the job, but it's hard to love something when there's that internal disconnect.
Yeah. So good. Well, hey, you've got an exciting year ahead, and you've got a book coming out that I think is going to be an incredible, powerful gift to the world and especially to the sales community. Michelle, you got to tell us about this book, and I can't wait to unpack some of the ideas that you've put together for all of us. This is going to be incredible.
Yeah, so I think this is the first podcast that I've been on where we're about to talk about this.
Yay! Right on. Yeah.
Honestly, everyone that's listening, I haven't even announced this. I think when this airs, I won't even have announced it to my social media audience. So you are like behind the scenes.
Keep it a secret.
But I wanted to share it because I am in the midst of it and it's consuming so much of my attention. So I have a couple of children's books that I wrote over the last couple of years, but when I speak, it's normally to corporate audiences. It's usually to adults. And there are so many things that are a deeper level than I could cover in a children's book that I really wanted to share with people. And so I wrote a personal development book called The Flipside: How to Invert Your Perspective and Turn Fear into Your Superpower. And quite the different writing process as well to write 70,000 words versus I think like 680 the first book was. Way less pictures, a few more pages. But the stories that I get into in those chapters, a lot of them I've never told. Stuff I cover in my keynote is in there, but it goes so far beyond that. Each chapter has some pretty crazy stories, mostly from my military career, some from combat, some from my personal life, some from the air show environment, and then kind of the principles I use to manage these stressful situations and the lessons that we can all use in our day-to-day lives from them. So it's attention getting story, lessons, and then how can you use it? That's kind of the format of each chapter. And it is slightly terrifying, but also very exciting to put all of that out there in the world. And it will come out September 9th, 2025. So a little while from now. But I'm all about delayed gratification in a world where we get a lot of immediate gratification. Right? It's nice to wait for something and be excited. So pre-orders are open when this airs. They will be open, which is so exciting.
So cool.
Yeah, I'm hoping you can unpack something. There's a word I keyed in on only because it's near and dear to me because it drives me crazy, is fear. And fear causes anxiety.
Yep.
And I will hold my hand up and say, it gets the best of me sometimes. So unpack part of this fear and anxiety and what could somebody expect when they start diving into your book?
Yeah. So I think people see what I've done in my background. They see combat pilot, deployment experience. They see the Thunderbirds flying and just how precise and objectively dangerous those maneuvers are. And a lot of times people would be like, you're so brave. I don't know how you do that. I could never do something like that. And I realized that they were putting me on this pedestal of almost like this superhero But meanwhile, I'm struggling with fear and self-doubt and imposter syndrome and all the things that any human struggles with, especially if you're pushing yourself and you're doing something that's really challenging. And dropping that curtain and normalizing that for people is such a gift to them, because I think a lot of people, they admire whoever it is, the head person in their company or the person that has the highest sales or the Thunderbird or whoever it is. They put them on a pedestal and they're like, there's things that people like that do. And then there's smaller things that people like me do. And when you bridge that gap, now it makes them realize that fear is normal. Self-doubt is normal. If you're moving forward and you're growing and you're reaching for big things and you're learning new stuff, you're going to experience both of those. And it's not courage and bravery or fear. They stand hand in hand. And the only thing that distinguishes those people that you put on a pedestal is that they move forward despite the fear. They go do the thing, even though it's still there.
So powerful in all of that. And I love that perspective because I think everybody in sales at some point, if not most of the time, has felt imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Everybody in leadership has done it. And, you would think, hey, we're talking to a fighter pilot that has flown the most prestigious planes in the world. And you go, wait a second, imposter syndrome exists up there at 30,000 feet. So I'm curious, when you step into that environment, you strap yourself into the jet and you head up there, and fear and that feeling starts creeping in, because I'm assuming it does based on what you're telling me. What do you do with that? Like, what do you do when you feel that and it starts just trying to come over you and maybe take you over?
So I think in the cockpit, at that point, I was doing the thing and I was very task focused. So it was very much, what is the mission? What do I have to do next? There's not a lot of downtime to get kind of stuck in that cycle of thoughts.
Yeah.
So I really rarely experienced it in the actual jet. It was very much like, okay, what's my airspeed? What's my altitude? What's the next thing? Who do I need to be talking to? You just don't have time. And I was very focused on doing well in that environment. And if I let my thoughts wander, that was like dangerous, right? Like I needed to stay on task.
Yeah.
So I think that's where people think I experienced it, right? Like head on pass with a fellow Thunderbird for the opposing passes. That's arbitrarily like the audience is all like, ugh. And even when I watched it after I left the team, I still would get that like, oh, even though I know the secret sauce, how the jets are not going to hit each other. So I think where I experienced it a lot more was on the ground when I was making big decisions, or when I was even stepping out to the aircraft, like headed out to strap into the jet as a newer airshow pilot. And I knew all those people were watching me, and all those people were watching every little thing I did. And I really put a spotlight effect on myself where I felt like I was being constantly analyzed. And on the Thunderbirds, that actually is true to some extent. You are very much in the public eye. But I think for most of my career, that wasn't really true. And I overemphasized how much people really cared and were judging. They were concerned about themselves. But I think the moments that really matter were when I would have some big opportunity pop up and I would get that feeling of excitement, be like, oh, I would love to do this. Like, this is something I'm passionate about. This is something I know would be good for my career. Like we all have had them, those moments of excitement. And then quickly I would recognize the self-doubt, that feeling in the pit of my stomach, the thoughts about, oh, maybe I'm not experienced enough. Maybe I should wait till next year. There's surely someone better in the squadron that should apply for that. X, Y, and Z. And for a long time in my career, I was not aware. I did not have that perspective on when that fear would creep in. And I kind of just let it be the truth. I was just like, oh, that's facts. Like, that means I shouldn't go after this. As I gained confidence and more awareness and perspective on that, was able to zoom out a little bit, I would be very aware of the physiological feeling of excitement and doubt. And that perspective was so powerful because it allowed me to pause for a second and decide what I really wanted that would support my end goal, not just what my feelings in that moment were telling me to do. And the more that I did that, the more that I decided to do the scary thing. And then the more that I decided to do the scary thing, the more that built a track record to myself that I was capable of it. And that fear was less and less because I was just building confidence.
You know what was this is fascinating stuff. And I love keying in on certain words. It's just how my brain works. But you used a word called focus a little bit ago. And speak to the salespeople and sales leaders out there, because what you did required extreme amounts of focus.
Yep.
And if salespeople and sales leaders are going to get to the next stage in their career, become better, in my opinion, it requires deep amount of focus. So what's focus look like to Michelle? I'm just curious.
Yes, I think you really have to know where you want to go. Like that's the first thing. To use a lot of analogies that we can carry over from the jet, every mission, we had very specific objectives. We had a commander's intent we were trying to meet. We knew our role in it. And I think when you get into a new career, you're very aware of those things, but the longer you're there, you can kind of lose sight of them a little bit. And you kind of go on to autopilot and you just do the same things every day or every week. And you don't really take that moment to look back and like debrief yourself and be like, okay, what are the things that I'm spending my time doing? Mm-hmm. Are the decisions that I'm making actually moving me closer towards my goal? And, what really is that goal? Mm. And I think no matter what career you're in, whether that's weekly or a monthly, moment where you schedule that in your calendar, you're like, okay, this is where I look back on the week and I evaluate and I adjust. You can just find yourself trundling down this path and doing fine, but never really leveling up and never really moving and adjusting your goals, even though your life circumstances might have changed.
There's so much in that. And, I'm thinking as this is releasing here, about a month into the new year, this is the moment that everybody has set the New Year's resolution and all of that. And I think this is a real gut check moment for all of us. I was really struck by the way that you said, hey, when I'm in the cockpit and I'm in the air, I am laser focused on what I'm doing. I don't really have any time for fear and doubt to creep in. And I think there's something powerful about that, because as sales professionals, and I think sales leaders listening to this as well, when we've got specific focused goals and we know what we're doing, we're not just kind of wandering through our week or our day, and we know where we're headed, what we're doing with our time, all of that, there's a lot less opportunity for fear and doubt to creep in into that, where we start making excuses. There's an observation there that, there's something powerful about setting goals personally. I think also in the sales world, we don't have commanders, we have sales leaders. Yep. And there is a mission. We're all working in a direction. I think the clarity with which leaders put out what the mission is and what the goals are is maybe something that's lacking in a lot of companies and sales teams. I'm curious your perspective on that.
Yeah, this is a great segue into something that I get asked about a lot that I think will hit on what you are bringing up and some additional stuff. So people will see the Thunderbirds fly and they will ask us about trust all the time, right? Mm-hmm. Flying 18 inches from another jet at 400 miles an hour, staring at the wing of the aircraft next to you, no matter where the formation is pointed, is very counterintuitive. It's against your survival instinct. And it requires an insane level of trust. Same thing with those head-on, opposing passes. And I did a lot of reflection after I left the team and I started speaking, because I would get asked about that all the time. And I was like, how did we really create that? And I think the first thing, and this is what made me think of it, is that we had a very cleared common mission that everyone was bought in on. Like from the day one that you sign up and you get accepted to the team and they give you your Thunderbird patch, there's a patch ceremony where they talk about the history of the team, like the importance of how it represents the entire military and America. And, like the responsibility you have as a patch wearer to represent that brand and to do the mission of recruit, retain, and inspire. And so right away, people are like, this is our organization's big goal. And they also are taught very quickly how their specific role is absolutely critical to that goal. For the pilots, it's easy to see what our role is. But even the people behind the scenes in maintenance or in supply, taking inventory of parts, or whatever role it is on the team, it is made very clear that they're valued and that they have a contribution that's essential to that mission. And then the other pieces of creating that trust are really providing the team with the tools that they need, right? The resources that they need to complete that mission. And then accountability, feedback, and ownership. And when that's modeled from the boss down, from the commander down, from the sales leader down, that's when it starts to create a culture where everyone can show up and own their wins and their failures. Because if the leader's not doing that, or if the pilots who are super visible for the team aren't doing that, aren't fessing up to mistakes, aren't openly talking about when they need help or they should have done something differently, no one is going to, right? There's no psychological safety there for people to own up to things. And when you create that accountability where people are held responsible for the missteps that they make, and when I say that, I don't mean it in a scary way. I mean, it just becomes the norm. And I'll talk about the fighter pilot debrief because that's such a good example of it. Any flight that we flew, no matter it was the first air show, the last one, a combat flight, a pilot's first flight, we would do a debrief. Whoever was part of the mission would go in the room, close the door, usually pull up the recordings from the cockpits. They would look at what went well so we could replicate it in the future and not just get lucky, and anything that went wrong. And it didn't matter if it was me as a brand new lieutenant at 25 years old that made the mistake, who was learning, or if it was the commander of the entire wing who might be a one-star general and is still a pilot by trade, so still flies occasionally, and he made the mistake. They were debriefed and talked about the same. And so that like status, that title, that rank, all of that set aside in that environment. And there's just a respect that goes on during that time where our goal is not to shame and ridicule people, but it's really because we have a common goal of making the team or the organization as good as possible. And we're all bought into that. So that allows us to, check those egos at the door and be like, yeah, I should have done that better. And I'm motivated to share that with you and look at how I can do it differently next time because I'm so invested in making the team better. So I don't feel that fear and anxiety that I'm going to have a reprisal, that there's going to be like these massive consequences because I didn't do something perfectly. And so when you create that consistent accountability, eventually it just becomes the norm and it gets less scary to people. It doesn't have that negative connotation, and people are willing to own up and take ownership, for the good and the bad, more and more. And I think that's all part of that constant feedback. And that's what really, really creates that trust.
This is what I encourage. All the sales leaders that are either listening or watching this, go back and listen to the last 5 minutes of what Michelle just said. There's so much gold there. Just imagine, just for a moment, if you debriefed, I'll just use the word you used, Michelle. If you debriefed with your salespeople after every single sale or after every single meeting. Now, some of y'all might be going, well, this is tedious stuff. Yeah, it is, but it's important stuff. That's how you're going to build trust. All too often, they don't debrief on the wins. They debrief on all the stuff that went wrong so that, right, the salesperson all of a sudden goes, man, I'm not going to talk to my sales manager.
Yep.
Because I know what's going to happen.
Yeah. And when you debrief everything, like maybe it's every Friday or maybe it's once a month. It really just depends on the ops tempo of the office and the organization. When you do it consistently and it becomes the expectation that this is something we always do, and it's not something that people dread because it's a great opportunity to get feedback that they can use to make themselves better. So I think when you realize that, people actually look forward to those opportunities, but you can't just be bashing them for mistakes, right? You have to, like you said, debrief the wins and do it all the time, because then it becomes something that's not just negative.
Yeah, and it's an overall heart of saying we're professionals here and we're going to get better at our profession, whether that is flying a plane, whether that's in whatever role you're in sales. As we wrap up this conversation, Michelle, this has been fantastic. So cool. I'm just curious, what's maybe one or two of the biggest things that you learned as a fighter pilot now that you've brought into your role as a sales professional and entrepreneur in your current role?
One thing that popped into my mind when you were talking earlier that I think answers this question, because you brought up focus. We talk about focus in the aircraft and task orientation and, mission focus and all that kind of stuff. But I think there's another part of it as well. And that's where the fear and the anxiety can come in when we really get focused on ourselves. So I'm picturing like a salesperson either in a meeting or on a call, and they're auditing every little thing that they say and their body language real time, and how exhausting that is and how distracting it is from you being able to speak from your heart. And when you shift your perspective from being hyper aware of every little thing that you're saying and doing to instead focusing on other people or the other person on the receiving end and asking yourself, how can I deliver to them in the best way? How can I have the most impact on them? How can I give them the thing that they need? When I realized that, while I was with the Thunderbirds, because I did my first year on that team, I was very aware that a lot of people were watching, and it was very stressful. Sometime in the middle of the pandemic happened, and then coming out the other side of that, I ended up staying for a third year, which was unexpected. And during that time, my mentality kind of shifted where I really, really started to love seeing the impact that I could have on other people. And that's ultimately what led me to go do what I do now. And I realized that my self-doubt, that feeling of imposter syndrome, all of those things really just faded away when instead I was focused on how can I deliver and impact this person in the best way. And when I became a speaker, it became even more apparent, right? Because the spotlight is literally on you. Those lights are blinding and they are hot. And all those eyeballs are staring at you. And you're on a loud microphone. And I think it's one of the top fears for people, right? Is public speaking for an obvious reason. Like there's an opportunity to get judged there, and there's an opportunity to fail in front of everyone. But when I stopped worrying about, did I like move my arm awkward when I said that thing? And instead I made eye contact with those people that I could tell it was impacting, right? Like I could see them nodding. I could see the emotion on their face. And it became less about the parts of the speech or the message that I loved, and it became more about which ones impact the audience the most. And I refined my speech over time based on that criteria. That feeling of self-doubt and anxiety before going on stage has gone away so much. And so shifting that spotlight in those moments, even if it's a single phone call or a single conversation, to how can I deliver the most value to this person?
There you go.
It reduces that anxiety so much.
So good.
Hey, Darrell, I just got to ask. So you got to give me grace on this one. But I know our listeners, because I'm listening here to all of this. I'm like going, okay, Michelle's got to drop a favorite Thunderbird story. Before we sign off, you got to share a favorite Thunderbird story with our audience, something that was like a highlight, something that you can take us off into a great rest of 2025.
There are so many good, amazing things that happened. My first event for the public ever with the Thunderbirds was the Super Bowl flyover.
Nice.
So,
wow.
Yeah, casual. We got to go to the game. This was 2019 in Atlanta. 100 million people saw me be slightly out of formation when we made our turn over the stadium. It's fine. But honestly, I think one of the coolest moments, and one that people bring up to me a lot now, I got just a really cool opportunity to be on the Kelly Clarkson Show. So random, right? Morning TV, winner of American Idol. Obviously, everyone knows her as a singer, which is cool in itself. But not just being on the show ended up why it sticks with me. What I got to do, though, was surprise a 7-year-old little girl who just idolized the Thunderbirds. And she had her own blue show suit with Thunderbird patches, her little hat, and she wore cowboy boots with it. And she did not know I was there. And Kelly brought her out on the stage, and she's interviewing her, and her name's Amelia, after Amelia Earhart. She's just the cutest. And Kelly is like, are there any Thunderbirds that you really look up to? And she's like, yeah, there's this one. She's number 5. Her name's Michelle. She flies upside down. So fast, breathing between every word. It was just really funny. And then I get to come out and surprise her. And Amelia jumps over the back of the couch, like over the end table, walking around. Like she's like, oh, and turns around and jumps over the furniture. And there's a live studio audience and everything while this is happening, and runs back and just like comes sprinting at me with her arms open. So I bend down and she just runs in like I'm her parent or something. And so she won't let go then. And we're like on live TV or on at least live audience. So I pick her up and I walk back around the couch and sit down, and her little cowboy boots are just swinging back and forth. But her just pure joy.
Yeah.
In that moment. And the cool thing is that anyone can search that on YouTube. If you search Thunderbirds Kelly Clarkson Show, that clip will come up. And it makes me tear up now watching it. It just elicits so much emotion for anyone that watches that segment. And just seeing the impact in that 30 minutes we got to spend together on set that day is one of the coolest things. I know people thought it'd be like, oh, I flew supersonic and pulled 9Gs upside down. But no, it was that moment with that little girl. It was so cool.
That's so good.
That's from the heart. That's beautiful. Michelle, what a great conversation. I know in addition to going out right now and pre-ordering the Flipside, how to invert your perspective and turn your fear into a superpower. In addition to grabbing that book, how else can folks get more Michelle in their life?
I am on a lot of social media platforms. I think for this audience, LinkedIn is a great one. I'm a LinkedIn top voice, which I don't know how that happens, but it magically showed up one day. But I do create about 5 pieces of content per week, and they are all with the intent to have a lesson or something inspirational that people can pull from them. So I think they bring a lot of value. And then I also share that same content at MACE_Curran on Instagram, as well as just some silly fun stuff on there. So if you want to see pictures of my dog more than anyone should, Instagram is also a good place.
No, but I will tell everyone, because I follow Michelle on Instagram, there's some cool video on Instagram that you put out.
For sure. Some flying. I have some really amazing flying footage. The GoPro camera was really good during that time.
Wow.
It's just an insane perspective.
So cool. Michelle, what an honor. Thank you for sharing your time and your heart with us today. This has been amazing.
This is I feel like we could talk for twice as long. So thanks for having me.
We'll have to have you back. Thank you, Michelle.
Thanks, Michelle. Oh, that was so good. What an
incredible conversation. You got to, everybody, let's go grab the Flipside. Let's cheer Michelle on in this. And this so many great things about what Michelle shared with us today. And I think we're going to be unpacking this conversation for quite some time.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And I just got to go back to a couple things. The word focus and debrief. Just imagine what it would be like, again, sales-centric for a moment. Sales leaders, sales professionals out there, get extremely focused in on your role in 2025. Sales leaders, debrief. Make a commitment to consistency and discipline. Debrief with your team. Debrief the wins. Debrief the losses. Learn together and watch what starts happening to the culture of your sales team.
And I think, to reiterate again, this time, we get into the new year. It's easy to start slipping on these resolutions. I think this is a good moment where you recognize, did I have a resolution or was it just an intention? Can we flip those into like real goals? And can we hold ourselves and each other accountable to those? It's going to make a massive difference this year. And we just want to keep cheering you on as together we flip it upside down. The flip side, how to invert your perspective and turn your fear into a superpower. What a great message to kick off the year.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I just wanted to say, this is our commitment to everybody who listens or watches us here on the podcast, is we're going to bring fresh voices, new ideas. It's our commitment to our listeners. Be prepared. 2025 is going to be an amazing year.
Absolutely. So thank you to everybody who's subscribing and leaving comments on YouTube. If you listen on audio, we really appreciate you leaving a review on the platform on which you listen. We've got great guests coming up throughout the spring and the rest of this year. So make sure to like and subscribe. And thank you for sharing this. Till next time, keep being genuine, keep being authentic, keep building trust, turn your fear into a superpower. And most of all,
sell from the heart.